I'm going to begin the health talk, and we're going to begin with a, I'm sorry to those who thought I was going to go over, it's my fault, I was going to begin with a natural remedy of comfrey, and so I want to apologize, I'll do that next time, and but instead I'm going to start with another natural remedy, just a very short one, and I share this one for a reason. I want to look at some scientific literature on lemon balm and stress. One of the things is many even physicians don't realize, because it's not taught in the medical textbooks, not because it's not in the scientific journals. It's in the scientific journals, several natural remedies, sometimes in the top scientific journals like JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association, The Lancet. I mean, these are some of the top-rated peer-reviewed journals. They'll do studies on natural remedies, and sometimes they'll see incredible results. And I share this one for a reason. I'll share with you why. Lemon balm and stress. Research had already shown that lemon balm has a calming and mild sedative effect, but no study had yet been conducted to actually cause stress to patients to see how lemon balm could alleviate the stress. Feedback here. A little bit. All right, and so what happened was, so researchers in a placebo-controlled, double-blind crossover study. Crossover study works like this. So for instance, let's say we cut this room in half, and half of us would use a certain amount of this lemon balm, let's say 300 milligrams, and the other side would use 600 milligrams for 2 weeks, and then we'd switch the amounts. And maybe you don't even know how much you're getting. Or you'd have placebo on this side, which is a pill or something like that with nothing useful in it, and the other side would have the actual active agent. And you'd use it for 2 weeks, and then you'd have maybe a washout period of a couple weeks where you don't use anything, and then you switch, and this side would get the medicinal product, and this side would get the placebo. So that's what a crossover trial is. So they're very beneficial because you can try it on everybody. And they tried 2 different doses of lemon balm extract, in this case 300 milligrams or 600 milligrams against placebo, in a lab-induced stress on the participants. And while taking the 600 milligrams of lemon balm, they had an increase in calmness during the stressor. They also had less alertness. So there was a side effect to taking 600 milligrams. While taking 300 milligrams of lemon balm, they enhanced their speed in mathematical processing without lowering their accuracy. So the reason I share this particular natural remedy is because it has been shown in the peer-reviewed research to lower levels of anxiety or stress. And one of the great things about lemon balm is it tastes good. Right? It's something you enjoy. Often you think if something's beneficial, it's got to taste like garbage, right? But that's not necessarily true. And if you ever I grow lemon balm right outside the front door of our house. It's a just pretty green leafy herb. And it has, if you go rub your hands on it and smell your hands, it has one of the most wonderful smells you'll ever experience. If you haven't done it, probably most of you have. It's just a great scent. But the reason I share this is to share with you that specifically, often people think, well, if 1 is good, 10 is better, right? And what this shows is, no, more lemon balm isn't necessarily better. Both of them will lower stress levels, but by taking more, you're going to lessen your alertness. And most of us aren't sitting around thinking, man, I wish I were less alert, right? So it would probably be better to take the lesser amount, 300 milligrams, but I want to share with you something very interesting here. Here is a study in the journal Toxicology and Industrial Health, and they reported on the impact of lemon balm on people who get regular low-dose radiation. They had subjects who were workers in a radiology department take a lemon balm tea. You're just drinking regular old lemon balm tea. The tea was made from 1.5 grams of lemon balm leaves in a tea bag steeped in 208 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly, basically just about boiling water, and 100 milliliters of water for 30 minutes. They would drink this tea twice daily. And lemon balm tea lowered DNA damage in the subjects who drank it twice daily. And just talking to someone who's a pilot. And one of the things is you do get a low dose, I'm not telling you you have to do this, but you get a low dose of radiation, or actually radiation every time you fly. And that's part of life. And so it's something to consider. It's a nice, tasty drink. You can take it with you if you're in radiology, or if you work giving people x-rays or in these kinds of things. This could be something that is an enjoyable way to possibly fight DNA damage. So something to consider. No pressure on that, but I love this stuff. I think it's just a fantastic tasting tea and one of the best smelling plants that exists, in my mind anyway.
I'm mixing it with mint.
Yes, mixing it in with mint. I think they're in the same family also, if I remember correctly. And so, yeah, that would be perfect. You can mix those together. So that's our simple natural remedy for today. But now I want to share the gut-brain, weight loss, and the full factor. I actually love this presentation. I should put a picture of how I used to look when I was wore a larger man's clothes, I guess you could say. And my wife and I got married, and we got bigger and bigger. And my health kind of went downhill, and she didn't feel very good either. And so finally, I began with gallbladder issues and all kinds of problems. And so at a physician, I was making a documentary on archaeology, history, and cultures of longevity. And I had a physician tell me I had to change some things, and I'm a guy, and I was like, no way, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that, because I'm a guy, you know. And but I was staying with, my wife and I were staying with her and her husband, this physician and her husband, and she said, look, I'll cook with you, because we were recording her and her patients, like 18 of her patients whose lives have been just revolutionized by this diet she was putting them on. And so I thought, well, she said, look, I'll cook for you while you're here. And I'm a guy, and if somebody cooks for me, I'm probably going to eat it, it'd be the easiest way to go. So I did, and it just changed my life. My gallbladder pain went away within 3 days. I began to have more energy than I had since I was 35 at the time, and I had more energy at 35 than I did when I was 16 or 18 years old. And I thought, this is amazing. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about this. Some research that was done out of Minnesota by a researcher by the name of Leanne Burge. Fascinating study. They took children that were aged roughly 3 to 5 years old. They put them on 2 separate diets, one meal. They put them on a meal. One group would have, there were 2 groups that would have squash soup, and there were 2 groups that would have, squash soup and, we'll say carrot soup. I think it probably been even down here somewhere. I should remember. It doesn't really matter because it's not butternut squash and, it's somewhere in there. We'll just say carrot soup. It doesn't really matter. But so then what they did was the researchers would go to one of the groups with the carrot soup and one of the group with squash soup, and they would tell them 4 times while they were eating, you need to finish the meal. Eat everything on your plate. You need to finish it. Eat everything. And 4 times they would repeat to them that they had to eat it all. And then the other group, in their same group, eating the exact same food, whether it's carrot soup or squash soup, the other group, they would give them the exact same food, exact same amount of food, but they wouldn't tell them they had to finish it. And what they found at the end of that meal is that the people who were repeatedly told to eat all their food ate less than those who were not told to eat all their food. Because you know what? Humans don't like being told what to do. And that's why when that doctor told me, you got to do this, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so I'm not here to tell you what to do. Because I know if I try to force you to eat a certain way and do a certain thing, you're not going to like it. But if you saw and just decided, well, okay, if you see the reasons, you might be like, okay, yeah, I'll maybe give it a try. And I'm not here to force you. I can sit and eat my simple food, and my dad will eat his octopus across from me, and it's like we can have a good time together. It doesn't matter. So I'm not judgmental of anybody the way they eat. I really don't care. But I love what happened in my life, and I love to share the research about it also. So I want to talk a minute before we delve into the food on dopamine. Dopamine, formerly thought of as the pleasure molecule or neurotransmitter, brain chemical, has multiple actions, one of which is desire or excitement. And it has been described as the molecule of more. It is never satisfied because it's always looking for something it does not have. Dopamine always wants more. And so once dopamine has done its work of helping us obtain things like food, relationship, other neurotransmitters take over once we obtain something. And these other neurotransmitters are things like oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and endocannabinoids. And so these are things that help us maybe appreciate what we have. You probably think of oxytocin. People think of that as like that bonding neurotransmitter for a woman and a baby. And it is that. It is something that takes place between a woman and a baby. Not only, that's not the only thing it does, but it helps you appreciate what you do have. But dopamine never helps you to appreciate what you do have. It just never does. That's not what that chemical does. It always makes you want more, always, right? And these molecules, the other molecules that do help you appreciate things, are called, the researchers call them the here and now molecules. They do help you appreciate those things. And so we're going to come back at the end of the message to look at dopamine and its impact and how you can actually be changed, because you can become addicted. I know what it's like to be addicted. I used to not be able to stop smoking. I would drink myself to sleep at night. When I was a teenager, I would literally, almost every night during school, I'd be drinking. That was just part of my life. And, so obviously that was a long time ago, but nevertheless, I know what it's like to struggle with that, with dopamine and constantly wanting more of something. And looking at dementia and waist size, according to the American Academy of Neurology, those who have larger waistlines in their 40s have higher chances of dementia in their 70s. And those who have a large waist in their 40s and are overweight have 2.3 times greater risk of dementia. And so I want to look at something very interesting. When we look at what's happening in the world, it's good to investigate the cause of things. There's a verse in Job 29, verse 16 says, "The cause which I knew not, I searched out." What is taking place in society? So we're going to talk a moment about the best lifestyle to lower cholesterol, help to get to an optimal weight, reverse heart disease. Mostly when people think of heart disease, they think of the plaque getting larger and larger to the point where it completely occludes or blocks off the blood vessel. But in reality, most of the time, that's not how a heart attack or a stroke happens. What actually happens is the plaque, most of the time, ruptures, it breaks off, and then it slams shut rather than it can slowly grow shut, but most cardiac events do not take place with it fully just growing together like that. Also, the best lifestyle to reverse or lower the risk of diabetes, lower the risk of dementia or Alzheimer's, and lower the risk of cancer, and sometimes even reverse it, lower risk of depression, and enhance quality of life overall. Now, this is a chart here from 1870 to 2013. That was just when this particular investigation was done, at least to this one. They may have continued on, but this is the only one I found on this. And this is looking at body mass index. Body mass index, you probably heard, is not a perfect predictor of health, because somebody can be massively buff and they're considered overweight, but they're not necessarily unhealthy. It's just, but in general, most of us aren't massively buff. So in general, it kind of works, There's a few outliers, we get that. But this is anybody with a BMI 25 or above is considered overweight, and anybody with a BMI of 30 or above, it's not in this chart, but 30 or above is considered obese. And it's just a mathematical equation. And so back in the 1870s, the average American was basically thin and trim, and we slowly gained weight until roughly 1925, right around then. And ever since then, we struggled. Now, it dropped down after the war, but then it's continuously precipitated upward since that time period. And so the question is why, and if you listen to the internet is assured that there is a dirty, terrible word. It's almost like a curse word, and it starts with a C. They will tell you the problem why all Americans are gaining weight is because of, anybody got a guess? Carbs. That's what they will tell us. And let's look at the actual research rather than just, popular people on the internet. So are carbs the problem? So let's look at things, and the worst offender, we're told, is wheat and bread. That's why every American is overweight today, we're told. Let's look at the research. So is that true? Here's 1909 to 2008, flour and cereal consumption. And when we say cereal, we're not talking about like Lucky Charms or something like that. We're talking about cereal grains, just the grain itself, not breakfast cereal. So flour and grain, then we'll look at sweet potato consumption, because these are mainly carbohydrate foods. And so let's see, our Americans, is the reason why people are so heavy today because we're eating more flour, we're eating more bread than ever before. Well, let's find out. So the average American in 1909 had over 300 pounds of flour and cereal. We were eating way more bread 100 years ago than we do now, way more. Actually, 100 pounds more per person per year. 100 pounds. And were they overweight back then? They should have been massive. Because if bread is what's making America overweight, when we ate 100 pounds more, instead of being more overweight, we were actually, almost everybody was thin and trim. That's interesting. Let's go forward. How about potatoes? They say I can't eat those potatoes, they'll make me fat. We used to eat 200 pounds of potatoes today, and we now eat around 125 pounds. And when they ate more potatoes, they were thinner. What? How could this be? Let's go even further. Here's sweet potatoes. We used to eat maybe 25 pounds. We were never big sweet potato eaters. Now we're just north of 0 pounds per year. And going forward. So this is strange. These are the things we're told all over the internet. Stay away from them. That's why all Americans are overweight. And when we ate more, we were thinner. In cultures in the world, like the Okinawans in Japan, when they were one of the cultures of longevity, and all thin and trim, almost every single one of them to a person was thin and trim, and was living into their 90s or 100 with good cognition. They weren't losing their mind. They were eating 85% of their diet was carbohydrate, and nearly 70% of their diet was sweet potato. Sweet potatoes, right? So let's go. Do you think we're eating more or less cheese than we used to? Well, yes, we are eating a lot more cheese than we used to. So that's changed, right? That's going up. How about beef, pork, chicken, turkey? These, most of them, we eat a little more beef than we used to. Not massively. A little. Back in the 70s, it was significantly more, but not that big of a difference. Pork, no real change there in America. It's not a healthy meat at all. It's not healthy for you, but that really hasn't changed. Chicken we do eat significantly more than we used to, and we'll come back to that later. And turkey, we eat a little more, but not that big of a difference. I don't think it's even mainly the meat that's actually making people more overweight. I don't think that's primarily the issue. The chicken actually is making a little difference today. It does seem to be making a difference. Chicken, we'll get back to that later, but I don't think it's the primary reason for the weight gain in America. Now the next thing is not the primary. It's a factor. It's a factor, but it's not the primary factor. The next one after that will be. So the next one here is, how about, do you think we're eating more sugar than we used to?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we do eat a lot more sugar. I mean, you can see like pounds per year. This is all the way back to 1820. They were eating just a few pounds in an entire year. And now the average American is eating around 100 pounds of white sugar per year. And you may think, oh, I don't do that. Maybe you don't. But in general, Americans do. But it's not like they're shoveling white sugar into their mouth, right? Where are we getting it? We're getting it in our, drinks, or you dump it in your coffee, or you may not even do that. You're just having soda, or you could be having, pastries, or cereal, not cereal grains, but boxes of cereal, all kinds of things. Almost every packaged food that's a mixture of ingredients, not everyone, but almost everyone is going to throw some sugar in, because everything tastes better with sugar, right? And so it's easy to sell things when you mix sugar in. And you'll also hear there's this big lie on YouTube of all these influencers, the most popular influencers. I don't think they're lying. Somebody lied and then they all repeat the lie because they don't know. If you tell a lie long enough and loud enough, people will believe it. And they say that, our government told us that we were supposed to eat more sugar. You find no evidence in it. I'm not defending the government. I'm the last human being that defends the American government. We make all kinds of mistakes. But I can't find any evidence that they were like, eat your sugar, people. I mean, like pushing sugar. I'm sure somebody did, like the American Sugar Board or something like that. But it wasn't, when you looked at the original food pyramid, they weren't truly pushing sugar. And I'm not even promoting the food pyramid either. I'm not at all. But it's kind of not a misnomer, because that's a misnomer, me using that term. But it's kind of like a misunderstanding. And so what we're eating on average about 300 calories a day of pure refined sugar. That's a factor, but it's not as big of a factor as the next point, and that is how much vegetable oil we consume in the United States. We are eating on average 700 calories of refined pure fat. And so if you take these two refined foods, pure refined fat and pure refined sugar, you put them together, how many calories are we eating of just pure sugar and pure fat? 1,000 calories a day. So if you cut out of your diet pure refined fat and pure refined sugar, within 3.5 days you would lose a pound on average. That's pretty significant. If you ate whole unrefined foods the way God designed them, weight would fall off without even trying to lose weight. And we're going to get back to that. We're going to get back to that. I'm not telling you have to do it. I'm not judgmental at all. Like, you can do whatever you want. But it's just interesting. Why are we at this place today? And these two reasons actually are the primary reasons. By the way, they're vegan food, right? Mm-hmm. Oil's vegan, sugar's vegan. That just because something's vegan doesn't mean it's healthy, right? You know, it's not a sin to eat them either, by the way. I'm not saying anybody that eats it is a sin. That's not my point either. So this is the American Journal. I'll skip this for time's sake. I'll share it. Why not? I'll share it with you. This is. I'm not telling you need to eat massive quantities of bread, but here's a fascinating study. It's the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, and they took 16 overweight college-age men, and they were split up into two groups. Group A had to eat 12 slices of white bread with a combined total of 1 gram of fiber per day. And Group B had to eat 12 slices of enriched fiber, so more like maybe a whole wheat type bread, with 25 grams of fiber per day. So is eating 12 slices of bread a day quite a bit of bread? And that's the most of a loaf in a day. Do most people eat an entire loaf in a day? Very few people would do that. So what ends up happening? The average calories before the intervention were 3,200 calories per day per person, and they were given a total of 3,200 calories per day, but they had to eat four slices of bread per meal. And they could eat as much of the 3,200 calories as they wanted. And what happened? Group A lowered their caloric intake from 3,200 to 2,350, and Group B lowered their caloric intake from 3,200 to 1,975. Well, what happened? Group A, eating the white bread, 12 servings of white bread, these are overweight people, they lost an average of 13 pounds eating a bunch of bread. Huh, that's strange. And, whoops, I missed the last one. What did I say? Sorry. Group B, they lost an average of almost 20 pounds. Eating a bunch of whole wheat bread, 12 slices of bread per day. Now, I'm not saying that you need to do this. This is not what I'm promoting that you have to do. If you don't do well with bread, don't eat it. My wife, sadly, she doesn't do very well with bread. We tried it, taking it out of her diet, adding it back, taking it out, and every time, she just doesn't do as well. I do phenomenal with it, so I do eat plenty of bread. But if you don't do well with it, just cut it out. You know, each person has to work with their own body. And so, Group A, their cholesterol dropped from 231 to 155. If you get your, typically what happens is you'll hear this all over the internet. Cholesterol doesn't matter, doesn't make a difference at all. And what we've had the animal industry has decided we can try to prove that cholesterol doesn't make a difference. And so what they'll do is they'll take a study where someone has like 210 calorie, or 200, total cholesterol of 210 rather, and they'll have people with like 240, and they're like, look, there's virtually no difference between heart attack rates. But both of them are high, and once it gets high, it doesn't make that much of a difference, so there's not much of a correlation. But when you can get your cholesterol down under about total cholesterol under about 150, it can make a significant difference. You're nearly a heart attack-free zone. There are a few people that will have a heart attack under a total cholesterol of 150. And then for whatever reason, the Group B did not drop as much, and I'm not sure exactly why that was. They dropped to 172. And there were no changes in fasting glucose, so eating all this bread did not cause them to have spiked blood sugar either, which people would think, well, yeah, sure, but you're going to get diabetes. But that's not what they found. They found that it didn't actually negatively impact their blood sugar at all. And so let's go forward. Eating more bread kept them from eating more calories. It was filling up their stomach, and they're like, oh, I've had enough food, right? I'm eating all this bread, I can only eat so much, right? And, well, we'll jump past this for now. But I want to share with you something that my wife and I have termed the full factor. We bought all this, well, you'll see in just a moment. We bought a bunch of food. We did all the mathematical calculations and the measurements to make sure it was accurate. And but before we look at these foods specifically, this gives you an idea of what 500 calories of different foods would be like in the stomach. Number one, this is 500 calories of refined oil, any oil, doesn't matter which one. Coconut oil, olive oil, doesn't matter which one, any oil. It's roughly 500 calories. Now, if you ate that, now, nobody would just generally eat 500 calories of oil, I get that. But if you did, would you be full, yes or no?
No. Yes.
No, you can tell, because you'd have this big empty space in your stomach. And you become full through your stretch receptors. The body senses like, hey, that's enough, please stop eating, right? And this is 500 calories of pork, You wouldn't be full with that. There's 500 calories of chicken or 500 calories of mixed vegetables. It fills up the space in your stomach, and your stomach is finally like, please stop eating. But you could double the calories in this without adding almost any space by adding oil, right? It's very common actually, you'll hear women will say like, I don't know what's wrong. I go out to eat with my husband. I get the salad. He gets the steak. And he doesn't gain any weight. And I'm the one gaining weight. Because you can actually look into it. In some cases, you can get more calories depending on what you're putting in your salad. Might be like chicken salad, you dump some oil on there. And it may have more calories, even though it doesn't seem like very much food. It might be more calories than what the husband's eating, right? And so it's not a bad thing to eat. I'm not saying it's a sin to eat oil or anything, but it is the greatest food to help you gain weight if you're looking to. As far as the most weight-gaining food in the world. We'll get back to that in a moment. So these right here, Oreo cookies, I don't know if you know, but Oreo cookies are vegan. Are they healthy? No. So once again, just because something's vegan doesn't mean it's healthy, right? So now what I'm going to do is, all these foods, like I said, my wife and I bought all these things and measured them and checked out how many calories. And so this is these fig bars, like similar to Fig Newtons, and 4 of these tiny little fig bars are 280 calories. Now, you can either eat that, or you could eat an entire cantaloupe, and it has the same amount of calories, 277 calories. Now, I'm not saying you need to go eat an entire cantaloupe, but my point is, what we're doing is showing you that certain things are prone to fill up the space of your stomach and tell you to stop eating, and other things have tons of calories, but they're in a very small space. So you can eat, because most meals, if you eat till you're comfortably full, you eat about the exact same amount of food. But it's depending on what you put in there and how calorically dense it is, will cause you to either gain or lose weight or stay stable. And we'll clarify that as we go along. These are peanut butter pretzels, and boy, are those things tasty, aren't they? The 150 calories there. Or you can eat 1 entire pound of strawberries, and it has virtually the same amount of calories. Now, I know that a pound of strawberries, I eat an entire pound of strawberries often with breakfast. I buy a whole box of a pound, I eat that entirely to myself, and it doesn't fill me up. I have to eat more food, because, I eat a lot of food. But nevertheless, but what would fill you up more out of those 2 things? Obviously the strawberries, right? It's obvious. So these are peanut butter cookies, kind of like Nutter Butter, but the dollar store brand, because my wife and I were cheap buying this stuff for the pictures. And looking at this, these are 140 calories, or you could have just under 12 ounces of blackberries. Much more filling, filled with all kinds of micronutrients and antioxidants, super healthy for you, and same calories, more likely to fill you up. Now, this wouldn't be enough for a meal. I could throw that in there with a pound of strawberries and some other food added for one meal, but those are tasty too, aren't they? M&Ms, they hit the jackpot on the flavor, didn't they? But 220 calories, or you could have 2 large Honeycrisp apples. And obviously the Honeycrisp apples would be much more filling. And I'm not telling you need to eat 2 Honeycrisp apples. I'm just showing you things that have the size comparison, the calorie density of certain foods. And I don't know about you, but if you only eat, back to that, if you only eat that much, you are a saint. And I know some of you women have the ability, some of these thin women blow my mind that they have the ability and like the self-control to eat that. In my life, it's funny, whenever I had a bag of something growing up, I ate the whole bag. And I went over to my friend's house, and my friend, he would have a bag of like M&Ms, and he would eat a few. I'd never seen such a thing in my entire life, eating a few M&Ms or whatever. No, to me, it was like you just eat the whole bag, whatever it is. That's how it was. And so, back to our next one. This is chocolate hazelnut spread, kind of like Nutella, dollar store brand, whatever it was called. And you can either eat that. Now, I'm not telling you sit at a meal and decide, do I want Nutella or this next thing? I'm just showing you what has the same amount of calories. That's the only thing and reason I'm showing you these 2 things. You could either eat 2 ounces of hazelnut spread, or you could have over 3 pounds of cucumbers. And they have the same amount of calories. Now, I know nobody's like, do I want hazelnut spread or do I want, cucumbers? Nobody's thinking that. But I'm showing you, now, it would be hard to eat 3 pounds of cucumbers, yes or no? it would be hard. Not that I would want to either. I mean, there would, but you get the idea. So these are this is 2 ounces of cheese, just a tiny little slice. I mean, it's not a big giant, there's a small thin slice of cheese. This is 220 calories. Or you could have an entire 1.28 pounds of butternut squash, an entire butternut squash. And the butternut squash has less calories than a little tiny slice of cheese. Does this make sense? Yeah. So as the cheese consumption goes up, and don't get me wrong, nothing is almost any more tasty than cheese. I mean, cheese is, and there's partly a reason why. We don't really generally think about this, but in milk, there's something called casomorphin. And you hear that term queso, like if you went to a Mexican restaurant, they would say, would you like queso? Would you like cheese? That's the term for cheese. So casomorphin is cheese or dairy product morphine substance. And morphine is a drug. Now, not that they inject it in there. It's not like some sinister person is putting this casomorphin in there. It's naturally in there to make the cow love and really want mother's milk. It's naturally there. And then when you take that milk and you basically bring it to the point where it's extremely concentrated in cheese, now you have a ton of casomorphin, and it's just like, it's hard to stop eating this stuff. And I know, it's very difficult to stop eating. It makes sense why that is. But you get the idea. So this can fill you up. If you ate an entire butternut squash, I'm not saying to eat a meal of entire butternut squash. That's not my point. You can mix and match the foods, and you can do that. You can make them taste good. That's fine. But my point is, if you did eat an entire butternut squash, do you think you probably would be full at that time? I probably. I mean, some people. I don't know about me. I eat a lot, but probably many people would. So here's 7 cheese sticks, 490 calories, or you could eat, and I know those are super tasty too. And I know you're not trying to decide between these 2 things, or you could eat an entire 3 pounds of broccoli. Now, once again, nobody's going to eat 3 pounds of broccoli, and I'm not suggesting that you do. But the point is, what would fill you up? I mean, you probably couldn't even eat 3 pounds. And you could cook it, you could eat it raw, it didn't matter. You're going to eat 3 pounds of broccoli, and it would fill you up, right? And these are combos. I don't know, anybody not know what combos are? We all know. Oh, you don't know. That's all right. God bless you, ma'am. You must be a real saint, right? But they're basically like peanut butter pretzels with cheese in the middle. Like the ones I always ate were pizza flavored, and they were very good. I'm not going to lie. But you look at a little tiny 6 ounces. This is just 6 ounces. You can either eat 6 ounces of combos, or you can eat 6.5 pounds of watermelon. Now, don't try that. You would probably literally burst your stomach, and so you're not going to do that, I understand. But we're just talking about how something fills up your stomach, the full factor. Here's something simple like Ritz Bits. These are just 3 ounces, just a tiny bit of Ritz Bits, 450 calories. Or you can eat all of these carrots. That's 2.8 pounds of carrots. Certain things fill you up, but don't give you many calories, but they just pack you full with nutrition. Tons of vitamin A and various minerals and so forth. Here's 24 chips like Pringles, but it's the cheap ones that were at the dollar store once again. These were 300 calories for just 24 chips, or you can eat an entire 1.65 pounds of acorn squash, and you get less calories from that. Yes?
After you took the picture, did you eat the junk food?
Is this confession time now? I'm going to be honest with you, my wife wouldn't let me. That was cool. She would be, yeah. So, okay, here's, I'll leave it at that. So here's 2 beef burger patties. Remember, I had my gallbladder issues and so forth, so I had to learn to be more careful, because I was not careful for decades. So here's 2 beef burger patties of 740 calories, or you could have 7 sweet potatoes.
Oh, wow.
Could you eat 7 sweet potatoes at one meal?
No.
You couldn't do it. You couldn't do it. Here's a tiny little 3.9 ounces, 4 ounces of herring fillet and oil, little little fish fillet and oil, or you could have an entire pound of sweet corn. And an entire pound. And I do actually. I cook a whole bag of sweet corn and eat the whole thing myself. Sadly, my wife's allergic to corn, and so I get the whole pound bag, and that's just a part of the meal. I mean, that's just one little part of my meal. And so, to give you an idea, here are potato chips. This is just 5 ounces of potato chips, which is not very much. You can either eat, that's 750 calories, or you could eat 18 red potatoes. Could you do that? No, you couldn't do it. And so the point is, what is making, now by the way, why are there so many calories in these potato chips?
Oil.
It's the oil, it's not. And people say, I don't want to eat those because they're carbs. But did you know there's more fat in there than there is carbohydrate? And so you got more calories from fat, and then you blame the carbs, the little bit of carbs that were in there. People actually don't understand what the actual components of the food they're eating, and they just call it a carb when it's a fat. That's the strange thing. There are some carbs in there, but like I said, there's less. Now, this is a carb. This is a carb. This is mostly carbohydrate. And people, if you went, there's people who go on a 100% potato diet, and their weight just falls off. Did you know that you probably think of the Irish potato as something that we think, oh, that was like just historically Irish. The Irish had never heard of a potato before the 1500s. No European had ever heard of them. The potatoes come from South America. They come from the Andes Mountains. And so when the explorers went down there, they found the potatoes, they brought it back to Europe, changed the world actually, because Europe used to have, every 10 years they would have just decimation. People would be dying of lack of food because the main staple was bread, and the wheat was kind of finicky, but potatoes are incredibly easy to grow. And so once the potato made its way over to Europe, the famines basically almost ended and the population exploded in Europe. And then after that, what ended up happening was, you may know in 1840s, there was the Irish potato famine, where the Irish at that time, since the 1600s, they had been eating, potatoes became a real staple in Ireland. That's why we think of them as the Irish potato, but they're not Irish. And so it became such a staple that by the 1800s, the average Irishman was eating 10 to 13 pounds of potatoes a day. He ate almost exclusively potatoes with some milk added to it, and maybe a few green weeds that they would eat and they would cook along with it. That's what they would eat almost every day, almost exclusively. Then you think, wow, they must have been super unhealthy. When the English would visit Ireland, they're like, you can't believe how healthy the Irishmen are. They were fit, they were trim, they were just healthy guys. And the Brits, eating their diversified diet, weren't nearly as healthy as the Irishmen. Very interesting, but nevertheless, but sadly, in the 1840s, there was that Irish famine, that potato famine, and it killed half the potato crop, and because that was their staple food that almost all they ate, 1 million people died because they didn't have enough food. That's why so many Irish moved over to the United States, but you got your history lesson for the day. So, these are plantain chips. These are 840 calories. This is 6 ounces, 840 calories. I used to eat a bag of these every night. And I got my gallbladder issues because I was eating all this fatty food. And then what ended up happening, no, I won't go into that. But notice, that's just 6 ounces. Here's 6 ounces of plantain itself, and it's only 200 calories. So notice, the oil quadruples the amount of calories in the food, right? It's not a sin to eat oil, that's not my point. But in reality, it does help us become larger and larger as a people, right? And so here are Kit Kats, 210 calories for a little strip of Kit Kats there. Or you could eat, I know you don't sit around wondering, do I want Kit Kats or do I want 2 pounds of asparagus? But you get less calories in 2 pounds of asparagus than you do in a tiny little strip of Kit Kats. And once again, I know there are certain women who can eat a tiny little strip of Kit Kats. But most people can't eat a tiny little strip of Kit Kats. We want the whole thing. I do anyway, And or here's mayonnaise. 2 tiny little tablespoons of mayonnaise have as many calories as 2 entire pounds, almost as many as 2 entire pounds of asparagus. Now, I know you're not going to eat 2 pounds. Once again, the point is you can mix and match certain foods, make it into a meal, and you can season it just right so you enjoy it, and you can lose weight, get to a fantastic weight, and have an energy like I've had. I can run better. Now I'm 40, I'll be 45 this year, and I can run a mile way faster than I could when I was 16, 18 years old. And it's not even because I haven't run that often. It's just my body works now. It just works the way it was designed to work. And so I haven't tried in probably a year, but I was at a school a couple of years back, and it was middle schoolers. And they had to run a mile, and they're like, hey, Chad, and I was speaking to them, and they're like, Chad, come run with us. And I was like, okay. And I'll tell you, my pride, I was like, I'll bet I can beat these middle schoolers, you're hoping, And so I'm like, I'll bet I can beat them. And so we start running, we start the race, and I'm running this mile, and I'm keeping up with the head of the pack, and there were some kids running pretty fast, and I was like, oh, they'll probably wear down, because kids don't know that you got to kind of yeah, you got to pace yourself, right? Well, I didn't know the kid who was ahead of me, his dad used to be able to run like a 4-minute mile. So this kid was really, 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 really good. And so I'm like 4 minutes something his dad could run. And so I'm running around, I'm like, man, he's not slowing down, and I'm trying to keep up, And he actually did beat me. But I got like 5 minutes and 30-some seconds or something like that. And I could hardly run a 9-mile minute when I was in high school. I was terrible on it. But I learned to eat in such a way that even if I don't run almost ever, my body just knows how to do it. It's just easy. And so my energy is better as, the Bible says, I'll get back to what the Bible says. Never mind, let's go for it. So, all right, so here's 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And you can either eat that, or you can eat, around just almost 2 pounds of sweet peppers. And nobody's going to eat that, but you get the idea, at least that many. So now I'm going to teach you something very quickly. The therapeutic diet, which, and I really don't care about selling a book. The only thing is, I don't even make much money on it. It doesn't matter. The reason my wife and I get this out, and I didn't make the book either, but we're the only people that still produce the book, but it was made by Black Hills Health and Education Center, and it has 2 kinds of recipes in it. It has standard plant-based meals, but then it has meals with the letter T in front of them, and the T stands for therapeutic. It's the same diet, roughly, basically a 10% or lower fat diet, calories from fat. And same diet of Dr. McDougall, Dr. Ornish, who was one of the first people to show that you could arrest or reverse heart disease. Same diet as Dr. Esselstyn, same thing, roughly a 10% fat or lower diet. You look around the world at historic cultures that ate natural foods, unrefined. It's funny, too, because people think there's this big push today for high fat, like, oh, that was the way humans ate throughout history. People don't actually look at animals. You look at wild animals, yes, it's true, we have fatty animals that we breed, and we make them fatter and fatter over generations by breeding the fatter and fatter ones, and we feed them and feed them and feed them in stalls, and so they are fat animals. But you look at most wild animals, their fat is like 10% fat. They were very lean. They were muscle. They didn't walk around with like chubby deer in the neighborhood, It just wasn't a thing. It's not a thing today. But because we have changed the world, like you look back, people throughout history mostly were on very low-fat diets. And so they were less likely. So they did an investigation of cultures around the world that historically just naturally ate around 10% fat diet. And they had near 0 levels of heart disease. Near 0, and it's the #1 killer in the United States. And so, I'm not telling you have to do it, but it is a diet that, in this cookbook, it has the therapeutic diet, which is the T, they have a T in front of them, and then if you got too skinny, it has other recipes that can help you put weight back on. And so it's just, I don't know of another weight cookbook like this, and that's why we promote it. And it's very good in general, for leaky gut, and although I would avoid anything with gluten if you need to avoid gluten. 6% of people should avoid gluten. 94% of people do fine with gluten. But if you need to avoid it, avoid the recipes with gluten. I don't need to avoid it, so I eat it all the time. But that's why I'm sharing it. That's why it's in there. But I want to share with you something that's annoying, but you don't need to do this all the time. But if you really wanted to know what percentage of calories from fat, you have to do mathematics, and it's annoying, but once you know what foods work for you, you don't have to go do this every time you go. So this is extreme, this is not what everybody needs to do, but if you're looking to reverse type 2 diabetes, to lose weight without even exercising, if you tried the diet of cultures that were basically some of the heart disease, near heart disease free, they do like 800 autopsies, and like 1 person would have heart disease. When every 12-year-old in the United States Almost every 12-year-old has the beginning of heart disease in America. 12-year-olds. And cultures with none. As adults, that would just based on their diet. But nevertheless, so let's check this out. So this is a nutrition fact. So you find your food. This happens to be beef chili. This is the nutrition facts. And I'm sorry this is so complex. I wish they would actually do this so it didn't have to be so complex. Okay, what you have to look at is total calories. We're not looking at portion control. The way we teach people to eat is to eat till they're comfortably full. Because does anybody like to get to the end of a meal and you're still hungry, yes or no?
No.
I sure do. And I don't want you to have to live your life eating until you're like, I have to stop now because I've already had my portions. Nobody likes that. You can keep that up for a while, but except for the few skinny ladies who can always do that. And God bless you, ladies. But most of us can't do that. And so most of us want to eat till we're like, I feel like I'm done. And we're going to show you how. The full factor shows you that you can eat till you're comfortably full, and the therapeutic diet allows you to eat till you're comfortably full and lose the weight that you don't want to hold on to and feel phenomenal while doing it. And so here's how it works. This is annoying. I wish I didn't even have to teach you this, but I'll teach you quickly. So you punch into your total calories. So okay, this is the way we're going to do it. First, we're going to start with the total fat grams. This is so annoying that they changed the nutrition facts so that it's hard to understand what percentage is from fat. They made it very difficult, so I have to show you through mathematics, and almost nobody knows how to do this. So you take the total fat calories, it's probably hard for you to see, it's 22. Because you look at it and you're like, oh, it's 28% fat. It's not 28% fat, it's 28% of your daily value according to their guess. But you have 22 grams of fat per serving. Okay, you just have to memorize this, and this is annoying. Every gram of fat has 9 calories. Every gram of fat has 9 calories. Every gram of carbohydrate has 4 calories. Every gram of protein has 4 calories. Fat has over twice as many calories per gram. So what we see here is 22 grams times 9. And if you did the math, it'd be 198. It's annoying, I know. Divided by the total calories. So you take the smaller number, divided by the total calories, and you'll find out it's 0.618, and you have to move the decimal place 2 places. This is like going back to math school, isn't it? You're like, man, Chad, I thought we were done. I never had to do this again. I thought we would never need that. And you don't have to do this, but I'm just showing you how to do it. So this beef chili is 61% fat. And so, okay, well, that's not therapeutic, I can assure you. And so potato chips, they tell us they're carbs, right? So let's look at this. The total fat grams are 10. So how many calories per fat gram? 9. So 10 times 9 is? 9. Yeah, okay. So we got 90 calories of fat divided by the total calories. 90 divided by 160, you punch it in your calculator, it's 56.25. So this is 56% fat. So this is a fat food. Potato chips are a fat, not a carb. They're a minority of carbohydrate, but still, it's not a therapeutic food, right? It's vegan, but that doesn't mean it's healthy, right? So, and I'm not saying it's a sin to eat it. You can eat it whatever you want, and I'll love you either way, but I'm just letting you see this. So you say, well, Chad, I eat kettle chips. I eat the healthy stuff, right? Well, let's look at that too. So this is 9 grams, so 9 times 9 is 81. Divided by the total is 160. It's 50% fat. It's roughly the same. It's virtually unchanged when it's the kettle chips. Now, it's not a sin to eat peanut butter, but it's not a great weight loss food, even though, I eat it because I get too skinny. But, so, especially on the therapeutic diet. Some people get too thin on the I was too big, but now, with the therapeutic diet, I have to kind of bounce back and forth. And not really, I just add a little extra things like peanut butter. So it's hard to see, but this is, this one is the old school, where they tell you how many fat calories. This is 150, they just tell you. Divided by total calories, 190, and it is 78% fat. So, it's mostly fat. And how about cheese? Well, we'll just jump forward and hopefully you get the idea. Fat calories, this is the old nutrition labels. They used to tell us how many fat calories, so you could quickly do it. You didn't have to do that times 9. You didn't have to look at total fat times 9. You just, and then they decided, we won't tell them how many people, how many fat calories. But, I just showed you how to do it. So this is 80 divided by 110 is 72, so this cheddar cheese is 72% fat. And ranch dressing, 100 divided by 110, yeah, the ranch dressing is 90% fat. That's pretty fat, right? Mayo, well, it is 100% fat. So it's literally 100% fat. So we put the cheese on our bread, we put the mayo on our bread, we put these things on our bread, and we say the bread made me fat. Isn't it kind of funny? It's not the bread. It's not actually the bread. Now, here's the thing though, when people cut bread out of their diet, they normally cut out of their diet crackers, many kinds of chips, they cut cake, they cut all kinds of junk food, and it's the junk food often that is actually doing it, or the things that you put on the bread. And olive oil, obviously also 100% fat, because that's all it is pure fat. Here's some vegan little legs. You say, well, they're vegan. Well, we'll do the math. Total calories from fat is 45, divided by 90, they are 50% fat. So it's vegan, but that doesn't mean it's therapeutic, right? It's not a sin to eat it, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's sin to eat anything we talked about. It's just, if you're looking to get healthier, it's not really the best way to go. So now let's look at normal food the way God created it for a look, just quickly. So here's black beans. These are 10% fat, 10 fat calories divided by 110, 0.09. These are 9% fat if you ate beans without adding oil to them. So what we say is when you have foods that are 10% fat, total fat calories, there's no portion control. You don't have to say, oh, I can only eat this much or I can only eat that much. You get to eat till you're comfortably full, and it will be therapeutic to you. It will begin to heal your body of many different diseases. Same thing with broccoli. So broccoli is, once again, 9% fat. People don't even think there's fat in something like this, but there is. It's still roughly 10% fat, right? No portion control. You can eat till you're comfortably full. Same thing with things like sweet peppers. Roughly 9% fat. We look at sprouted multigrain bread. It's only 5% fat when they don't add oil to it, right? It's actually very low-fat food. We look at things like cucumbers, 6% fat. Corn, 10% fat. Sweet potato are insanely low fat, 1.3% fat. Sweet potatoes are one of the greatest weight loss foods you could possibly eat. They're incredible. And by the way, if any of you struggle with constipation, like I said, the Okinawans would eat sweet potatoes at every single meal. You start eating sweet potatoes, and unless you are fully blocked, like you have to go to the doctor and to have the impaction opened up, if you're just a little backed up, sweet potatoes, if you eat them regularly, you'll start having normal bowel movements, you'll just be done with the constipation. It is incredible because they're so filled with fiber, they're so good for you, they're one of the healthiest foods you can eat. So if you need to have things start moving again, and by the way, you probably have to go all the way to Columbus for Trader Joe's, right? So if you ever are in Columbus, anybody ever had they're called the Murasaki sweet potatoes. They're purple on the outside and white on the inside. Anybody had? I know this fellow's had it. Anybody else? They're good, aren't they? They're amazing. So if you're ever in town, if you're ever in the city, go by Trader Joe's, buy a bag of those. They're purple on the outside. You can't cut them off in the store, but I'll promise you, they're white on the inside. You cook those things, throw them in the oven, put them in at 400 degrees, and however long it takes for them to get nice and soft, poking them with a knife or a fork, and they are just incredible. To me, they're way better than few people. Actually, I've only found one person that liked the standard orange ones better. Every other person I've met likes the purple on the outside, white on the inside better. So, but your mileage may vary, but they're amazingly good and super healthy for you. Also have that great fiber. Actually, I think they might even have more fiber than the standard orange ones. But I want to share with you something about chicken. Poultry may also be the most fattening meat. Those eating even 1 ounce of chicken a day, think like 2 chicken nuggets, had a significantly greater gain in body mass index over a 14-year period than those who consume no chicken at all. Chickens have been genetically manipulated through selective breeding to now contain 2 to 3 times more calories from fat than from protein. And even skinless chicken may have more fat, more artery clogging saturated fat than a dozen different cuts of steak. So through selective breeding and the way we feed them, chickens they used to be something that was kind of more of a weight loss meat. But we figured out a way to make chicken tastier than ever, and that's make them fatter and fatter and fatter. And so the foods we eat are not even near what we ate, even 100 years ago. The food has changed so drastically, even things like meat. So I want to explain this very quickly. Here's calories per pound. So if this was an entire pound of, that one's probably not a pound, the one I took a picture of. But let's say you had a pound of potatoes, 320 calories. If you turned that into a pound of tater tots, it would be 906 calories per pound. Now, if you turn that same thing into a potato chip, it would be 2,400 calories per pound. It is our processing of food, often refining. In this case, it's not refining, but it is adding the what to it?
Oil.
The oil to it that makes it if you're really looking to put on weight, I wouldn't even suggest eating that. There's other things you could do to put on weight if you're looking to do that. But it would help. It would help put on weight, but it's not the healthiest way to put on weight. So, or corn. I'm not talking about the corn cob, but like corn is roughly 400 calories per pound. And if you turn it into a corn tortilla, it becomes almost 1,000 calories per pound. Not a sin to eat, but it would cause you to gain more weight than just corn. And if you turn it into these things, it becomes 2,560 calories per pound. So, what are they? Fritos or corn chips or those kind of things, right? And so that's why we say it. So I'm not telling you what you have to do, but if you want to turn something like haystacks into a meal that will help you lose weight or reverse type 2 diabetes, you could either turn something like this without oil into a chip. I'm going to be honest, we love the feeling of fat. I'm not going to deny it. It tastes good, it feels good, but we don't often feel good when we're losing our health. So sometimes you'll get to the point. I know one fellow in here he's gone on this diet because he had heart issues, and your taste buds change. You begin to like it. Doesn't mean you'll never like junk food. You're probably kind of always like junk food, but the less you eat it, probably the better, right? So Dr. Zane Kine, this fellow, fascinating man, he was out of California. He was at Weimar for some time. And Dr. Zane Kine had a woman come to him. And she was overweight, and she wanted to lose weight. And so he said to her, I can help you with that. He's like, we'll talk about what you can eat. And he said to her, okay, you can eat more vegetables, you can start eating more fruit. And she said, oh no, I can't eat fruit. He said, you struggle with digesting it or whatever. She said, oh no, I can't eat fruit. Fruit makes me fat. And he said, ma'am, I assure you it's not the fruit. And she said, no, I know it makes me fat. And he said, ma'am, I promise you it's not the fruit that's causing your weight issues. And she said, no, I know my body and fruit makes me fat. And he said, okay. He said, well, why don't we just do a little simple test over the weekend? It was Friday. He said, you go home for the weekend, eat as much fruit as you want, and come back Monday, we'll see what happens. And she's like, she's going to show this ignorant doctor, She knows. What does he know? He doesn't know her body. So she goes home, and she is eating fruit like crazy. So much so, her husband's watching her. He's like, what are you doing? And she was just eating so much fruit. He's like, this guy told me fruit could help me lose weight. And he told me to go home and eat a bunch of fruit. And I'm going to show him how much weight I can gain weight over the weekend. I'll show him. So she's eating so much fruit. And he's like astounded. He's never seen anything like this. And so she's eating it. And he was so amazed by it. He's like, I'm going to come on Monday and see how it works out for him. And so he comes to the doctor with his wife. And she gets up, those, they got those ones, the old school ones where you push those little metal bars over or whatever. And this is a few years ago. And they push those bars over, and sure enough, you know what happened?
She lost weight.
In one weekend, she lost 2 pounds. And the husband, he spoke up right then. He said, Doc, my wife was going to prove you wrong. She was eating so much fruit that after the meal, she could hardly waddle away from the table. And guess what happened? She lost weight. Why? Because fruit is actually one of the greatest weight loss foods there is. And the reason is because it has so few calories. It has so few calories. There's a bunch of water, there's a bunch of vitamins and micronutrients in there, and there's a bunch of fiber, and it has, very little fat, very little calories. And so, but people say, Chad, but won't it cause diabetes? This is a massive study of over 100,000 people in the British Medical Journal, looking at the consumption of different fruit, and anything above the line could raise the risk of diabetes, and anything below would lower it. And then you have a reference. It could be a little bit different for different people. For some people, for about 50% of people, the reference range, for about 50% of people, melons can spike blood sugar because they just don't have as much fiber as a lot of the rest of the fruit. But some of the people, on the other half, it doesn't actually make much of a difference. Strawberries, for most people, it will lower their risk. Oranges, for virtually everybody, it lowers their risk. Peaches, plums, apricots lower more. Grapefruit more. Bananas more. Apples and pears more. Prunes. By the way, what is a prune? It is a dry plum. Notice the prune lowers your risk of diabetes more than a fresh plum. It's interesting. People say, watch out for dried fruit. Now, I wouldn't eat dried fruit personally. I'm not judging anybody that does. I wouldn't eat dried fruit that has added sugar to it. But if it is natural dried fruit, the research, I have a video on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Health and Homestead. And so if you don't go on YouTube, don't ever start. But if you do go on YouTube, you can check it out. It's Health and Homestead is my channel. I have a study where I go through the scientific journals looking at dried fruit and its impact on cancer. And repeatedly, the research shows that people who eat more dried fruit have lower levels of cancer. Just the opposite of what would be suggested. People say, hey, sugar feeds cancer. And I do believe if you're eating refined sugar, that is not going to be a good thing for your immune system to fight off cancer. But when it is in the package that God created it in, the research actually shows the opposite, that it seems to be something that might even be protective against cancer. Even one of the worst kind of cancers, pancreatic. Incredible. And so, looking at this is a chart I put together giving you a little idea. This is calories per pound. You look way down at the bottom, and you have something like broccoli or greens, 160 calories per pound. Now, it's even more, even less calories for something like, vegetable greens. I mean, it's I don't know, maybe 80 calories per pound there. But broccoli, 160 calories per pound. You don't have to eat it raw. You can cook it. It doesn't make a difference. Add some salt to it or whatever. And the apples, 240 calories per pound. Very low calorically dense food. Then the next one would be something like oatmeal, 304 calories per pound. Sweet potatoes, 400 calories per pound. Beans, 544 calories per pound. And then once you make the transition to meat, it roughly doubles the amount of calories per pound. So you have chicken, 1,000, beef, 1,300, pork, 1,400. But notice what has more than any meat is what? Cheese. And actually, do I have something here? Yes. But what has more than cheese? Tortilla chips. It's vegan, but it is one of the most weight gaining foods you could possibly eat next to oil. Oil's number one. 4,000 calories per pound. 4,000 calories per pound. Nothing has more calories per pound than oil. Whether it's olive oil, coconut oil, doesn't matter. They all have roughly 4,000 calories per pound. And I don't know why I did it like this. Wasting our time. Let me jump forward. We'll come very quick. Same things we just kind of hit on. But once again, even more calories than that are nuts. And by the way, nuts are a healthy food, but often people are eating too many nuts. Typically, the research shows that if you had about a handful or 1 ounce a day, it will give all the cognitive benefit that you will get. And any more than that adds no additional benefit and only makes you more likely to have weight issues. So if you're real thin, yes, eat more and it'll help you maybe put on a little weight. And I'm not judging you, do whatever you want, but I'm just letting you know according to the evidence there. And jump past, we're almost done here, we're just about done. Here's a review. Now, the United States government was the first institution to study Seventh-day Adventists with the first Adventist health study. It was back in the 60s because the United States government found that there were a bunch of, now the majority of Adventists eat meat, and you don't have to be a vegetarian to be an Adventist or a total vegan or anything like that. Nobody's forced to do that. But several Adventists right? About 36% of them are vegetarian or vegan together. And so the government thought, okay, you've got a bunch of these vegetarians. And so the government, at that time, they thought of vegetarianism as basically a disease. And so the government investigated, and as they looked into it, they found out, no, actually, they're living longer than your average American. So that began to be kind of a surprise. And then they did this, one of the later Adventist health studies, they looked at what Adventists were eating and their body mass index. And remember, anything 25 and above is considered overweight. So your average, and this is not insulting, it's just the research looking at Adventists, and they found that your average Adventist meat eater has a BMI of about 28.8. Now, not every meat eater is overweight. There's overweight vegans and there's thin meat eaters. We're just looking at statistics, right? Because you can be thin and trim and eat meat. It's very true. We're just looking at averages. So the average meat eating Adventist is a BMI of 28.8. The semi-vegetarians, who only eat meat every once in a while, they're 27.3. The pesco-vegetarians, they call them, have a BMI of 26. They're slightly overweight. The lacto-ovo-vegetarians, those are the ones who have dairy products, cheese and milk and so forth. They're just slightly overweight, 25.7. And the total plant-based people amongst Adventists who just eat plant-based foods are the only ones that statistically, on average anyway, are in a normal weight range. And it's not because necessarily they eat less food. The reason is because of what we just learned tonight, the full factor. Does that make sense? It's because that these guys can eat the exact same quantity of food every day of the week, but the food they have has way less calories, so by default, they will be a normal weight. They will have more energy. They'll be less likely to have diabetes and heart disease and all of those things. And that's what the studies have showed, actually, as they investigated that. So I'm going to give you a quick review of some of the foundation principles of weight loss. And we'll be just about done. So number one, if you make the most important principle your health, you'll actually likely get to a healthy weight. So the focus should be on your health, not just on some gimmicky diet. Number two, drink only water or herbal teas. Don't drink your calories. Sugar-sweetened beverages continually just add calories all day long if you repeat it. And that's all I drank growing up, was soda and so forth. Number three, never eat between meals. It's actually good for your brain. Makes you less likely to come down with dementia to not eat between meals. I can tell you the physiology on why, and it's quite fascinating, but I don't want to go too late tonight, so we'll go on. So number four, go to sleep early and get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Because when you get too little sleep, you're more prone to crave food. So a good night's sleep can actually make it, all these things are synergistic. They work together. It can make it that you'll be less likely to overeat. Number five, eat whole foods only unless you're too thin. When I say refined, or a refined food is when you've taken something out of it, like sugar, they refined. They took, out of the sugar beet, they took the sugar. So it's refined. They took the oil out of the olives. It's not a sin to eat olive oil. I'm not saying that it is. But if you're looking to lose weight or go on a therapeutic diet, you would eat whole foods. And if you get too thin, add some oil. You can do that if you actually struggle, Or you can just eat a little more nuts or olives or whatever. Number six, the greatest weight loss foods are vegetables and fruit. They are the greatest weight loss foods. Number seven, the best plan for weight loss is 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch, but for some, 3 meals is fine. There's actually a bunch of research on this. They call this early time restricted eating or early time restricted feeding, but I'm not going to go into that today. And number 8, exercise is mainly beneficial for enhancing the mind and increasing willpower and strengthening bones and muscles. Exercise is phenomenal, but the research actually shows it's not all that great for losing weight. Most people think, I gotta exercise, I gotta exercise, I gotta exercise. But Americans the main reason we're overweight is not lack of exercise, although, exercise does something, but it makes a small impact. The main impact is from diet. Number 9, your taste buds will change. That's the hardest one. I was putting a fella on the therapeutic diet, and I know it takes about typically a week or so for somebody's taste buds to change. At first, people try it and they don't like it, and then about a week in, we've been at lifestyle centers where people come for 18 days, and we're starting one just a half an hour from here. in Nelly. It's actually not in Nelly, it's out in the country, beautiful property. And people will come for 18 days. And I know the first weeks people are going to struggle. Like, And what they do is after 1 week, they'll say, you guys got a new cook, didn't you? Same cook, same food, but your taste buds change. So don't give up. Anybody can suffer for 1 week. Anybody can make it through 1 week of tough times until you end up liking it. And so number 10, the battle is largely won in the grocery store. What do I mean? If you don't bring it home, you won't eat it at home, right? Because I'm the kind of person, if I have an option for a bunch of junk food, what do I want to eat? I want to eat the junk food. And so it's hard, It's like if I was trying to quit cigarettes and I'm like, well, I'll just leave the pack of cigarettes in the cupboard, just in case, And sure, I would go back to it. I just couldn't have them around. I just let go. Now I don't want cigarettes anymore at all. I mean, zero. I have no interest. But you get the idea. Number 11, you were created to be an overcomer. Jesus wants to give us victory. He wants to give us help. And so, this is, here, were you taking a picture? Here, take the picture. I'll run through those again. I see someone taking a picture. I don't want you to miss that. Would you like it, or did you get it?
No, I did it.
All right, I'll get number 10, and then we'll finish up. Or 11, rather. There it is.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, and if anybody wants to get it afterwards, just come up here. I'll let you get it. Now, in closing, I heard this story of this man. True story, old minister by the name of Joe Kreuzer. He was on a plane back in the days when you could smoke cigarettes on planes. And he's sitting there on the tarmac, waiting to taxi off onto the runway. And it's amazing that you could smoke back then on them. But they're sitting there, and he couldn't smoke until you hit the right altitude or whatever. So they finally take off, and this young man sitting next to him is just staring up at the no smoking sign. And the moment the no smoking sign turned off, the guy reached into his pocket or his briefcase or whatever, pulls out a pack of cigarettes, and he lights up. And the guy sitting next to him, Joe Kreuzer, he's like, hey, have you ever thought of quitting? And he's like, yeah, I've thought about it over and over. I've tried. I can't quit. And Joe actually did seminars on teaching people how to quit smoking. And he said, do you mind if I share with you some of the things I teach? And the guy said, yeah, sure. And so Joe reaches down into his briefcase, and he pulls out a Bible. And the guy said, oh, I tried that and it didn't work. And Joe said, is that right? Well, it turned out the guy he was a Baptist, and so he believed in the Bible. He wasn't anti-Bible. And he said, well, do you mind if I share something with you from the Bible anyway? And he's like, yeah, sure. So he went to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 57, and it says, but thanks be to God, which gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. And then it says, therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. And so he said, so the text says, the first verse says, thanks be to God, which gives us the victory. And so he asked the guy, he said, last time you tried to quit smoking, did you believe that Jesus gave you the victory? And what do you think his answer was? No. Your average person isn't thinking that when you're trying. I didn't think that when I was first trying to quit smoking. I tried over and over, failed over and over and over and over. And so he shared with the young man that when you seek to overcome something, you have promises in the Word of God, like 1 Corinthians 15:57. But thanks be to God, which gives us the victory. We have to trust that God is actually going to fulfill what He promises us. And I wasn't able to overcome the cigarettes until somebody actually shared with me what the Bible said. It said in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19, what? Do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, which is in you, which you have of God, and you are not your own? For you are bought with a price, therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God. I didn't realize my body was to be the temple of the Holy Spirit. And there's another verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 3 that says, it sounds kind of harsh. It says, your body, don't you know your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit? And if you destroy, your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, and if you destroy this temple, God will, does anybody know? Destroy you. And somebody look at that and be like, wow, that's pretty harsh. And I heard that for the first time. I was still chewing tobacco, I was still smoking, and I didn't think, boy, that's harsh. You know what I actually thought? I thought, man, God actually wants me to quit. He wants me to gain the victory. I didn't think of it as me. And it wasn't until that day I never smoked or chewed tobacco again. I found victory that very day, realizing that the power was of God, not of myself. And that's why the Bible says, thanks be to God which gives you the victory for our Lord Jesus Christ. And one last verse. Psalms 103 verse 5 says that God is the one who satisfies your mouth with good things so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. And I can say that, having more energy than I had when I was a kid. Like, I didn't know it could be true, that you can satisfy your mouth with good things and your youth can be renewed like the eagles. We have an 80-year-old guy. I'll show you in one of the next sessions, 80-year-old guy, how it changed his life. It's not just for younger people. I love seeing old people do it too. It just seeing them totally change when they actually stick to something for their benefit, for their health, and for their happiness. So, any quick questions before we close? Yes, ma'am.
Well, so do you think that you should never have desserts ever?
No, I don't think you should. No, I don't believe that. I eat dessert. I had some today.
Of course, when you're trying to lose weight, don't have
Yes.
But if you, in your everyday life, it's okay to have small portions of dessert.
So a couple things. Number one, if you're one of those thin ladies who can eat just a tiny bit of anything, you can probably be healthy with just about anything. So different people have to deal with different things. Like, I'm an addict, like I was a smoker, I was a drinker. With food, I was an addict, so I'm not judging anybody else. You have to work with your own body. And so somebody who can be just like my friend who can eat a handful of M&Ms, right? Like, that a handful isn't going to make a difference, really. It's people like me who can't eat a handful. So I've had to learn to live in such a way that I enjoy the food. I love the way I eat. I love the way I feel. I don't feel I'm restricted at all. I don't feel like, oh man, here we go again. I can't enjoy my life or my food. So I do eat some desserts. I don't make it all the time. I don't eat it all the time. But yeah, from time to time, I totally have a dessert. And but if you're an addict, it's like an addict can't just like have a cigarette every once in a while. Because every time I would have one, I would need a whole pack that day. Right? Couldn't be like some people. And smoking's not good for anybody. But it's like some people could like take one and just do it every once in a while. You shouldn't do that because it's not good for you. But some people have more self-control, and I'm not one of them. So you have to kind of gauge yourself where you're at. Are you healthy enough? Can you handle it? And some people, if they go back to something, they'll just go full bore and they can't stop themselves. I'll tell you a very quick story. Agatha Thrash had this woman come to her. She was addicted to Dairy Queen ice cream, and she would just get it like all the time, like addicted. And then she learned about what the body, like, because she was like addicted. Now I'm not saying it's a sin to eat Dairy Queen ice cream, but she was crazy addicted. And so she would eat it and eat it. So then she got off of it. She was feeling better. She actually had a girl come to her house. She said, would you come to my house to make sure I don't go to Dairy Queen? True story. So then she goes for a while. She's like, I'm Victory. I don't feel like doing this all the time. Her health was getting better. And then she was driving around with her husband, and her husband's like, hey, you want some Dairy Queen? And she's like, no, I don't. He's like, come on, one time isn't going to hurt you. And she's like, you're tempted. Like, you want it, and somebody's pushing you to do it. She's finally like, okay. So he goes in, he gets her a thing of Dairy Queen or ice cream. So she eats it. And when she finished it, she said, go get me another one. He went back in, he got her another one. She ate it. When she got done with the second one, she said, go get me another one. He literally, she couldn't stop herself. I met a girl who was so addicted to food, she would eat until her tongue would bleed. So you got to work with yourself. You're not all bleeding from your tongue because you can't stop things. So in answering the question, you have to work with yourself and know your level of struggle with food or whatever. Most people are not to that degree. So if you can handle a little dessert here and there, no problem. Right? Anybody else? Yes?
You said earlier about just drinking water.
Yes, sir.
What about organic juices?
Organic juice? Yeah, so, now, there's a difference between them. When it comes to the highest level of health and lack of having something like the research shows that the best health in generally comes from strictly water. There are things that you can have some organic juices or just juice, but in general they are not as beneficial, except there are times also where somebody's nutrient deficient and putting them on some green juices, it can be very beneficial. Most people don't need to do that all the time, but some people will benefit from them. It's not like a sin to eat them, but we're more talking, but even tons of orange juice or tons of, grape juice is good for you. A little bit of grape juice here and there, it's good for you, know, but excessively kind of making that, you're drinking your calories. For those who are struggling with weight, it makes it harder to lose weight. So, but if you're temperate, no problem. Yes?
What about fruit for diabetics? It's always limited.
So now I'm going to do a whole presentation on diabetes, and I'll explain the physiology and the latest research on that. So I don't want to, but I would love to talk about it, but we will do that in one of the future sessions. Was there another question here?
Yes, does a cooked potato white simulate your body different than a raw potato? My dad used to eat raw potatoes, and he always told me, he says, well, it's better for your weight.
Well,
And I like it. I mean, you know.
you like raw potatoes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive. I have eaten it, and I don't particularly enjoy it.
I don't know. I mean, you know, I like salt on raw potatoes.
Wow, well, God bless you.
But
Ken.
I'm wondering if it is a difference. Your body is simulated different.
There is a difference. Your body can uptake the cooked potato to, you know, but most people, if you like it, wonderful. I met an old lady. She was around 100 years old. She just loved raw food, and she loved raw potatoes. So I'm not telling you don't eat raw potatoes. I just don't enjoy that.
I'm just curious.
You know, but no, I don't know all the. It's going to be more starchy, but it breaks down into more like of a carbohydrate. Obviously, starch is a carbohydrate, but it becomes easier to assimilate when it is cooked. But yeah, if you like it, by all means. Well, let's close with a word of prayer. I've actually gone a few minutes over, so let's pray. If you have any more questions, I'll be here. You can talk with me afterward. Heavenly Father, thank you for your love. Thank you that in different areas that, not everybody is addicted to food or tobacco or any of these things. Some people like me are just more prone to having addictive personalities. We have to be a little more careful than people who are maybe come from a better background or don't have as much of these issues in their family. And Lord, I pray that we would respect all of each other for our different ways we choose to do things. But Lord, if there's someone here who's really struggling, I pray that in some area, whether it's some addiction in their life, that they would find that victory in Jesus, that they would next time they're tempted, they would think, you know what, I know Jesus has given me the victory. I'm trusting Him. And by faith, we can find the strength to overcome different areas of our lives. And I pray that some people through these sessions will find health that they may have not had in years, and that they would satisfy their mouth with good things so that their youth is renewed like the eagles. In Jesus' name.